nag-post sila sa Facebook, ang sabi nila, medical frontliner, first come, first serve. 4:30 a.m. nandito na kami. Bigla sinabi sa amin, may listahan daw sila. Bakit hindi pa po nila sinabi nung nakapila kami ng 4:30 a.m. dito, na may listahan pala sila, para hindi po kami naghintay.
Anong gagawin namin ngayon? Maghihintay sa wala. So, hindi po kami titigil nang hindi ma-reprimand kung sino yung gumawa ng mga listahan nila.
You saw what transpired at the Santa Ana Hospital in Manila. Several medical frontliners trooped to the facility for a chance at getting jabbed with their preferred Pfizer vaccine.
With social distancing hardly observed, the waiting turned chaotic as only 200 public health workers were inoculated with the desired vaccine brand. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampa. You're watching The Big Story. Let's start with medical frontliners rushing to Santa Ana Hospital in Manila for a chance to get inoculated with Pfizer.
But the hospital only has 210 doses on hand, leaving many of them frustrated after waiting for nothing. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro will give us a front seat to the big story.
Ano yung ginagawa nyo? Ano yung sasabihin?
It's not a rally or a demonstration. It's a surge of health workers in Santa Ana Hospital in Manila, each one hoping to get a dose of the vaunted Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough to go around. After a 3-month delay, Pfizer finally delivered 193,000 doses of its COVID vaccine. Manila only got 7,000 doses, and in the Santa Ana Hospital, only 210 doses were delivered. Still, news of the Pfizer shot had public and private health workers rushing to the vaccination centers.
Ang choice ko po kasi talaga is either Pfizer or Moderna. So medyo na-relieve na kasi sa tagal ng hinintay, nakapagpabakuna na.
Because of the short supply, Santa Ana Hospital had to limit Thursday's vaccinations only to public healthcare workers. This caused a commotion among private health workers who had already lined up outside.
Meron kaming text, first come, first serve basis, regardless kung nandun yung pangalan mo, basta pumila ka. What's happening today is like, LGU lang, nakalista, kung di ka next, di ka part nun, X ka.
Ironically, some health protocols also went out of the door, even among health workers.
Kasi tignan mo, walang social distancing. Imbis na makasagip sila ng buhay, kakalat pa virus niyan eh.
Okay, lahat ng medical frontliners. When we say lahat, whether national government, local government, or private, pwede nyo ma-avail sa Santa Ana bukas at sa Biyernes.
Hospital authorities acknowledge the preference of many for Pfizer, but stress that at this point, no one gets to choose.
Ako nga, prefer ko Pfizer kaya lang, late na siya. Na-late na siya, so Sinovac ako.
In the next few days, more vaccines will be rolled out, including those of other brands. The health department says, so as long as the vaccines are approved by the Food and Drug Administrations, they will have to do.
Pasensya na po dun sa mga ibang naghintay, inakap muna namin yun sa amin. So bukas aakapin naman namin lahat.
I'm Jacob Lazaro and we are One News.
What transpired in Santa Ana Hospital is a glimpse of brand preference among health workers. How might this affect the country's vaccine drive? Dr. Nina Gloriani, head of the country's vaccine expert panel, joins us for answers. Hi, Dr. Gloriani, welcome po to The Big Story.
Yes, good evening,
Si Robbie po. Robbie po nandito.
Robbie and Greg, si Robbie ngayon. Yeah.
Dr. Gloriani, it's not just the health workers. Yesterday, we were talking about Manila. Sabi ni Mayor Isko Moreno, wala nang dumadating na vaccines. Sa Makati naman, sobra-sobra raw yung vaccines. Hindi nila maubos. And Dr. Kongki told us yesterday, it still boils down to brand preference. Kaya sa Manila, it seems like yung mga tao, mas mataas ang acceptance. Sa Makati, namimili yung mga tao. Quick question lang po. Yung arrival ng Pfizer, is it having an unintended consequence of making people, as we said in the earlier days, choosy about their vaccines?
Okay, that is very sad, no? That people are choosing which vaccine to get into their arms. So, itong delay with the Pfizer supply, its arrival, actually came from some problems na medyo administrative. So, what probably transpired in Santa Ana or elsewhere, wherein so many flocked to the vaccination sites, ay medyo nagkulang sa baka sa sa pag-announce that there will only be, let us say, 100, 200 or 300 vaccines for that day. Kasi the allocation for the Pfizer, there were only 193,000 doses that came in. And half of that is for the first dose and half is for the second dose, no? So they're not expected, UH is not expected to give pati second dose at this time, no? They will have to allocate. So, and it is not just Manila who will receive the Pfizer vaccine. Kaya there were only a few vaccines allocated per hospital. So that is probably where the confusion came. They thought they will have so many vaccines, but I think the LTU knew how many they will be getting.
So clearly there are logistical, operational, if not supply issues. Malinaw naman po yan at malinaw din yan sa mga sinabi ng mga na-interview natin. But I'm wondering about the optics of people seeing, even frontliners saying, kaya nga ako nakapila kasi Pfizer talaga yung gusto ko. Kanina paulit-ulit natin narinig. What does that do to the general public that we're trying to convince, get what's available?
Yes, so that is why we are convincing or encouraging or enjoining the healthcare workers to receive what is offered to them and not to, choose. Kasi there is no choice even if we have so many vaccines available now. What is allocated to your site will have to be used.
Okay.
So ganun sana. Ano na lang, pakiusap ba yun? Our healthcare workers.
Okay. Dr. Nina Gloriani, maraming salamat po for joining us. While there are reports of vaccine and brand envy, government is confident that current stockpiles will not go to waste. Tonight's big number is 83,000. That, according to Vaccine Chief Carlito Galvez, is the number of inoculations being carried out per day. At this rate, Galvez says the country will be able to administer the 1.5 million doses of AstraZeneca before it expires on June 30. Galvez says more vaccination centers will be opened soon to boost the country's inoculating capacity.
These are the other big stories tonight. 19 alleged communist leaders, including Communist Party of the Philippines founder Joma Sison, have been tagged by the Anti-Terror Council as terrorists. The mega-vaccination site at the Nayong Pilipino will push through. Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles said an agreement is now being finalized. And the Coast Guard challenges another set of Chinese militia vessels in Sabina Shoal. Another protest will be filed as 280 Chinese ships remain in the West Philippine Sea. These big stories after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. Despite strict protocols on religious gatherings in the NCR Plus bubble, hundreds of Muslims went to the Manila Grand Mosque today to commemorate Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro is back to give us a front seat to the story.
Even the COVID-19 pandemic is not enough to wane the devotion of worshippers like Nash Alilaya.
Kung nakakatakot man po ang virus, mas nakakatakot pa rin po ang Allah.
Hundreds of worshippers flocked outside the Manila Golden Mosque to celebrate Eid al-Fitr, which signifies the end of Ramadan or the month of fasting.
Because only a limited number of people are allowed in the Manila Golden Mosque, a lot of the worshippers have opted to lay their mats and do their traditional prayer called Salah in the streets.
During the prayer in front, social distancing was followed, but at the back, there's barely any space to squeeze in. People were praying elbow to elbow, occupying any space available. Olaw Sharof and her family of 13 took the risk for the sake of family tradition.
Kasi kinagawian na po namin na sa moske talaga. Saka mas mapipil namin, mas mararamdaman namin sa moske.
President Duterte declared May 14 as a regular holiday to celebrate Eid al-Fitr, but it's still subject to health protocols like wearing face masks and face shield. The inside of the Manila Golden Mosque can accommodate up to 5,000 people at full capacity. With the pandemic, the administrators only allowed 20% of that, which is 1,000. But according to the Interagency Task Force Against COVID-19, under the modified enhanced community quarantine, only 10% capacity for religious activities are allowed. Abang Samoro, parliament member, was one of the attendees. He said worshippers were just overexcited.
Siguro kung hindi po yung mga kapatid natin, hindi po sila nakasunod dun sa social distancing dahil po dun sa mahal nila kay Allah.
In Cotabato City in Maguindanao, the local government encouraged prayers at home and online celebration.
Kung maisip natin na mga kasama yan sa atin, hindi lang sa atin, kundi sa mga kapatid natin ng Pilipino, wag natin pumunta kasi yan din ang utos ni Allah.
I'm Jacob Lazaro and we are One News.
The Anti-Terrorism Council has tagged the Communist Party of the Philippines founder Joma Sison and 18 other alleged communist leaders as terrorists. This comes 4 months after the council designated the CPP-NPA as a terrorist group. Resolution number 17, dated April 21, described the 19 as Central Committee members of the CPP-NPA, whose goal is to overthrow the government. The resolution did not mention any basis for the designation, but a probable cause was found. The designation now allows the Anti-Money Laundering Council to open and freeze assets believed to be used for terrorism. 10 other persons allegedly linked to the Abu Sayyaf group, the Dawla Islamiyah, and the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters were also included in a separate resolution. The armed forces of the Philippines supported the move, but for CPP founder Joma Sison, this is just another case of red tagging meant to deprive them of their rights.
Time for an express look at some of the day's big stories. The Health Department wants to include Oman and the United Arab Emirates in the country's travel ban list due to the variant first detected in India. DOH Secretary Francisco Duque said he already sent his recommendation to Malacanang. The IATF has yet to decide on the possible extension of the ban on India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, set to expire tomorrow, May 14th. The mega-vaccination site at the Nayong Pilipino Foundation in Parañaque will push through despite several opposition. Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles said a memorandum of agreement is already being finalized with just a few minor technical edits. Many groups warned about the construction's possible damage to the ecosystem, despite assurances from ICTSI that no trees will be cut. And some politicos have been advertising on Facebook for more than a year ahead of the May 2022 elections. According to the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism's report, Senator Win Gatchalian has spent 4.5 million pesos boosting more than 600 posts in the past 8 months. while ex-Senator Antonio Trillanes used over ₱1 million to promote 45 posts. He has formally announced his intention to run for president. For the big story in sports, after failing to try out, some of the biggest names in women's volleyball did not make the cut in the initial lineup of the Philippine team. But will they still get the chance? Find out in my report. The door is not closed after all. After more than half of the invited attendees failed to try out for the women's indoor volleyball team, Volleyball Federation President Tat Suzara says they may still be included in the pool. The 16 who attended the tryout are automatically included in the squad.
The remaining positions, there are about 4 or 5 or 6 positions, will be decided later by Brazilian coach, Coach Jorge, when he comes on July 1.
The current pool consists of 8 student athletes and 8 veterans, bannered by Japan V-Cup champion Jaja Santiago.
We need a veteran libero to beef up the team. Outside hitter, we need 2 or 3 more.
Their volleyball bubble will begin in June. By July, a Brazilian coach and former 1992 Olympic gold medalist Jorge Souza de Brito is expected to arrive to help train the team. Subic is being eyed as a possible training hub.
It will be easier for our players in the national team na habang may PBL, they can also train in the national team.
Not only is the team competing in the Southeast Asian Games in Vietnam this November, they will also get tested in the upcoming Asian Senior Women's Volleyball Championship this August, where there's a good chance that the Philippines will serve as host in Clark. The men's team, however, needs no filling up. 13 SEA Games silver medalists were included in the 20-man lineup, including imports Mark Espejo and Brian Bagunas, who is still nursing an injury.
Hindi naman kailangan ng operation, need lang talaga ng conditioning, ng strengthening ng bata. Siguro by siguro June or August, makakasama na sa amin siya para sa pagkatas namin.
But it's the beach volleyball teams that may surprise. After clinching bronze in the 2019 Southeast Asian Games, the men's and women's team now have a chance at getting an Olympic spot should they be victorious at the ABC Continental Cup in Thailand this June. 10 players each have been enlisted to the men and women's team for beach volleyball. Gretchen Ho, we are One News. Time for another quick break. When we return, the country is set to lodge a new complaint as some 280 Chinese militia ships remain in the West Philippine Sea. And explosions light up Gaza's night sky as tension escalates between Palestine and Israel.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Maritime authorities drove away Chinese vessels at the West Philippine Sea for a second time, but reports from the National Task Force state there are still hundreds remaining in the area unbothered. The DFA has acted on the matter, but the palace is downplaying the situation. Patricia Mangune has this report.
After they were shooed away from the Sabina Shoal back in April, 3 Chinese maritime militia vessels returned to waters off the coast of Palawan, first on May 7 and another batch the following day. The Philippine Coast Guard and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources had to radio challenge them once again.
Calling 3 unidentified foreign vessels at the vicinity of southeast of Sabina Shoal. This is Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources vessel MCS 3001. You are within Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone.
Using 2 rubber boats, the Chinese vessels were eventually dispersed. The country currently has 5 government ships manned by the PCG and BFAR doing maritime patrols and exercises in the area, along with 7 sea assets of the PNP Maritime Group. In the latest report of the National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea, 287 Chinese maritime militia vessels remain in Kalayaan. But Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Locsin was livid for being kept off the loop on the report. The DFA is now firing off another diplomatic protest in response to the maritime encounter. Palace, on the other hand, is keeping its cool. Spokesperson Harry Roque says not every presence of Chinese vessels in the West Philippine Sea is a cause for concern.
So, wag nating problemahin yung buong West Philippine Sea kasi hindi naman buong West Philippine Sea, yung buong South China Sea na tinatawag ng mga China ay kiniklaim din natin.
He adds, keeping status quo in the contested area still benefits Filipino fishermen who are now free to go about their daily livelihood.
Tanong, nakakapaghanap buhay ka ba ngayon? Hindi ba totoo na nung mga panahon ng mga Administrasyong Aquino kung saan tayo po ay palaaway sa China, yun po yung panahon na hindi kayo nakapangisda sa Boro. So wag po natin kakalimutan na kung hindi po nabago ang pulisiya natin sa China, hindi pa rin po kayo makakapangisda.
Fisherfolk Group Pamalakaya has slammed President Duterte's friendly policy towards China on the backdrop of harassment incidents against Filipino fishermen. The group also denounced Duterte's claim that his jet ski remark back in 2016 was just a publicity stunt. They said Filipino fishers have lost their trust in the president. For News 5, Patricia Mangune, we are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From Interaction, the Tourism Department is investigating the alleged gender discrimination against transgender guests of a beach resort on Samal Island. Islareta Beach Resort came under fire over its ban on transgenders, citing lack of facilities to accommodate their demands. The resort claimed that female customers complained of trans women using their showers. Business World reports the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas held its key interest rate at a record low for a 4th straight meeting. The Monetary Board maintained the overnight reverse repurchase rate at a historic low of 2%. The decision to keep rates steady comes after the release of the disappointing first quarter gross domestic product data. And from News 5, Eastern Mindanao continues to experience weak to moderate rain due to tropical storm Crising. Signal number 2 remains hoisted over Surigao del Sur, Agusan del Sur, and parts of Davao region. The southeastern portion of Negros and Siquijor are now under signal number 1. Crising is likely to make landfall over the Davao Oriental, Surigao del Sur area between tonight and tomorrow morning.
In world news, violence between Israel and Palestine continues to escalate with no end in sight. Arian Kalumbayran with the details.
Large explosions light up Gaza Wednesday night after Israel launched an airstrike on a Hamas command post in the city. The attack killed 16 Hamas figures. A clash during the fasting month of Ramadan has sparked what has to be the heaviest fighting since the Gaza war in 2014. It's now a back and forth between the two camps. A residential building in Gaza collapsed as Israel unleashed another round of airstrikes Thursday. Palestine has asked Israel to leave their country be, while Israel has condemned ethnic violence.
حلوا عن صدورنا فسنبقى شوكة في عيونكم. لن نغادر وطننا, لن نغادر بلادنا.
מסתערים על שוטרים, פוגעים באזרחים שלווים וחפים מפשע. זה דבר שאנחנו לא יכולים לקבל אותו, זה אנרכיה. שום דבר לא מצדיק את זה.
Calls for calm did little to stem riots. 67 have so far been killed in Gaza, while at least 7 have died in Israel.
Another big story in sports. The Games and Amusements Board has approved the PBA's return to training plans, including its health guidelines. Gov't Chairman Baham Mitra said they see no major issues with the 5-on-5 scrimmages. The PBA is requiring teams to undergo RT-PCR tests 7 days before and a second test 2 days prior to practices. The league is hoping to secure government clearances as soon as possible to get the scrimmages going by next week.
Ellen DeGeneres will end her Emmy-winning talk show next year in its 19th season.
You may wonder why I've decided to end after 19 seasons. The truth is, I always trust my instincts. My instinct told me it's time.
Her show features dancing, games, and giveaways with A-list celebrities. Ellen said toward the show's finale, every day will be a celebration.
There will be a lot of surprises. There will be trips down memory lane, a few detours through why did I wear that alley.
The show had been marred by toxic work environment allegations. Ellen has since apologized. From an ending to an apparent new beginning, Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, or Bennifer, have reportedly rekindled their romance after 17 years. J-Lo, 51, recently broke up with her fiancé of 4 years, Alexander Rodriguez, or A-Rod. Ben, 48, has been single for quite some time after splitting with ex-wife Jennifer Garner in 2015. For News 5, MJ Marforty, we are One News.
The world is celebrating National Nurses Week. A vaccination center in Madrid, in fact, is honoring its workers with a concert. Here we can see the orchestra serenading the nurses with classical music. Dozens of them have already retired, but went back into action to administer shots and to admire the performances. One nurse said the recognition fills them with pride. For another nurse, while she likes the tribute very much, she said she would rather do her job with little fanfare.
Happy International Nurses Day.
Oh, and let's not forget, a lot of those nurses are our compatriots, mga Pilipino. In fact, di ba, parang one sad thing is sa UK, the deaths of medical frontliners disproportionately high among Filipino workers.
Well, they deserve the honor for serving as frontliners, and they also deserve to take a break sometime, paminsan-minsan, di ba? And hope they get inoculated, all of our nurses, very soon. Maraming salamat po sa inyong serbisyo. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.